I first met Gary up at UC Santa Cruz. He was walking up around Crown College and stuck out his hand, talked about one campaign or another, and then I heard him give do a reading of Mark Twain's The War Prayer.
Oh, boy.
And I immediately ran out and bought myself a copy, and I've been sharing with people ever since, because he helped me to understand that there was always something underneath the surface that was more important than what you saw at the surface. And Gary, I listen to Gary's land use report all the time, and I think that he could probably put our struggle over getting people involved in the planning process in some perspective here. Thank you, Gary.
Well, Andy, thank you, and thank you. Let me just tell you, San Benito Rising is the greatest thing that's happened in the Central Coast since way back with Lighthouse Field. Dave up there in the back row, I was sitting down there by him, and he said, it turned out he was from sort of Santa Cruz, and I'm from Santa Cruz, and he said, the greatest thing that happened there in Santa Cruz was that thing with the Hilton Hotel. I didn't really know what he was talking about. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, that saving that area out there in the coast. Well, that's where I got my start, and I want to just tell you a little bit about my history and then give you a real quick who we are and what we can do about the problems that Art discussed, because what you're doing is exactly what we can and must do, and you are an inspiration to anybody that's heard about you. And I am trying to publicize it in my little land use report and on my blog, and I went up there and took a picture, and it'll be on my blog very soon, because what's happening right here is one little potential germinating seed of success of the kind of democratic revolution that the future of our entire world depends upon. Art started off, we're in deep trouble. He didn't use the four-letter equivalent, but that's what he meant. We're in deep trouble here, and boy, are we. And this group and groups like this group are the way we are going to change the world. And we are going to change the world, or there isn't going to be a world. So we're going to do that. So my history is I went to Stanford and took American history, particularly focusing on the Revolution. I took a special honors course called Social Thought, Honors in Social Thought and Institutions. For 2 years, we studied and wrote about utopia, one word. Great course. I came to Santa Cruz after having gone to law school, quit law school, gone to the Merchant Marine, resisted the draft, gone to theological seminary. I came to Santa Cruz to be a lawyer, and I was I had a wife, I was starting a family, I was focused on being a lawyer and writing wills and, suing people who did bad things for my clients, etc. And I got approached by some people who were trying to save Lighthouse Field. And I didn't really know too much about it, although I'd read a little bit about it in the paper. And they ended up hiring me as their attorney. And it turned out what had happened was this. In Santa Cruz, the last open space on the coast within the city limits, 37 acres of right at the lighthouse, was being proposed for a convention center, high-rise hotel, shopping center, condominiums for rich people. And everybody was in favor of that. The unions were in favor of it for jobs. The Chamber of Commerce was in favor of it for business. The Board of Supervisors and the City Council were unanimously in favor of it. The development was underway. There was a joint powers authority doing it. And the only people who didn't like it was everybody else, the majority of the people. And so what happened was a young guy who lived close by to the field, was a surfer, and this happens to be right at Steamers Lane, if you know Santa Cruz at all, right by the lighthouse, where the surfers are, where the best surf is in the city of Santa Cruz, and a surfer named John Scott who had two possessions of any value. One, of course, was his prized surfboard, and the other was this old car that could take the surfboard to where the surf was. He found out about this plan, and he said, we've got to stop this. He said it to himself. We've got to stop this. So he sold the possession of least value, which was his car, and put a full-page ad in the local newspaper, the Santa Cruz Sentinel, that said, "Save Lighthouse Field," and called a meeting, and people came. I didn't go. I was an attorney working. They formed this little Save Lighthouse Point Association. I got involved, was going to be hired. They didn't have any money, so I just became a member of the group. I haven't been at your meetings. I've just watched you from across, the range there. Seems like it's very similar to San Benito Rising. That group did everything. I wrote a brief of everything they could possibly do, ending up with a city initiative, which I wrote, passed in 1974 to save Lighthouse Field. This group stopped that development that all the powers that be that wanted. Nobody thought it could be done. And what Art was talking about is absolutely correct. As soon as people saw that ordinary people could make the government and could do what it wanted, could take collective action to do what it wanted, it released an efflorescence in Santa Cruz, which, while it's dying away, still actually influences the kind of community that is existing there, because people figured out that if they got together and acted collectively, they could change the world. Let me just tell you what we did using that idea shortly after I got on the Board of Supervisors, which was 1974. I was 29 years old when I was elected, the youngest supervisor at that time in the state of California. I served for 20 years. Shortly after I got on the board, the federal government, under Jimmy Carter, wanted to put offshore oil rigs up and down the coast of California, including off Santa Cruz County. And we decided we didn't like that. And Santa Cruz County organized a coalition that included local governments first all along the all along the California coast, and then became a national coalition. We went to Congress, and for 20 years, we achieved a moratorium on any offshore oil drilling anywhere where it wasn't already taking place in the United States. And I was in the halls of Congress handing people little beautiful postcards of the California coast saying, "Save the Kansas coast." And they did. In other words, we understood that just from some little local community, we could ratchet our energy and power to control national policy and beat the oil companies. That's what Art is talking about when he says it's going to happen faster than you think. That's what can be done. And that's what must be done. Because I'm now going to give you what I promised, and I hope there's a little sacred in it, who we are and the world we live in. I write a blog besides doing this land use report, and it's called Two Worlds. And I really see, I came to this idea. It's an idea, and it's an idea I hope you find some use for. But at the end of my 20 years in public office, it suddenly struck me that there was a philosophical kind of way of understanding what I had experienced through my life of 20 years in local politics in Santa Cruz County. And that is, first, you look at a hand, and that's who we are. We are a bunch of individuals like the fingers. We're all different abilities, colors, shapes, sizes, thoughts, ideas. We're all individuals. Everything does start somewhere in the hearts and minds and soul of an individual, but we're together. You sever these individuals and start treating them as individuals. They drop on the floor. They can do nothing. The hand doesn't work because the hand is how we coordinate our individual efforts to do what we collectively, a word that Art used, think is the right thing to do to make the world be the way we want it to be. So what world do we live in? I say we live in two worlds. We live most immediately in a world that we create. In other words, we're sitting on these chairs. We made them. structures, institutions. We've recently had some experience with the institution of marriage. Turns out it's rather flexible. It's what we decide it is. It's not some God-given thing. It's what we decide it is. It's relationships that we determine. We live in a human world, most immediately, the world of money, the world of everything we do, we create. And in that world, anything is possible. Anything is possible. But ultimately, we don't live in our human world. Our human world is built within and created within the world of nature, the world God gave us, the world that is sacred, the world in which our ancestors lived. We're on holy ground. We are always on holy ground on planet Earth. We're always on holy ground on planet Earth. And the laws of the world of nature, the world in which we ultimately live, if we continue to live, you can't do anything in that world. That's like the law of gravity. You throw something up in the air, it will come down according to the laws of nature. The laws of nature say if you put too much greenhouse gases out there, you'll fry the people and all the life forms in the entire planet. We get it confused. So many people are confused. They think that the laws in our world somehow can't be changed and that we don't have to obey the laws of nature. That's wrong. We need to understand those laws are the ones we have to respect. Our laws we can change to accomplish whatever we want to do. And what we want to do is to have a life in which everyone can participate, enjoy this wonderful world in which we're so privileged to be alive, and you think about what law means in the world we create, your initiative is a law. It will become the law when we vote on it. We will change this world because we decide to do it. And how are we going to get there? Just like we got there after Lighthouse Field, we're going to see our own power to change the world thanks to you. That's why you're an inspiration, and that's what we're going to do.